Hello, and welcome. It's March 13th, 2026, and just 4 hours ago, something impossible happened. At exactly 8:14 UTC, the LIGO-Virgo-Cagra gravitational wave network detected a signal that defies everything we know about the laws of physics. But here's the twist. This wasn't a collision between black holes or a neutron star merger. What happened was far more unsettling. We're talking about a violent rupture in the fabric of space-time itself, emanating directly from the coordinates of 3I Atlas. NASA's Deep Space Network immediately reoriented the Goldstone antenna to track this anomaly, and what they discovered left the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in complete silence. Let me set the scene. 3I Atlas is currently 240 million kilometers from Earth. For months, we treated it as a comet, then an anomaly. But what happened at 8:14 UTC was something far more extraordinary. It wasn't an orbital shift. It was a puncture, a rupture. The data from the James Webb Space Telescope's SNI cam, which arrived just minutes ago, shows a region of absolute zero-point energy appearing behind the object. This is not a black hole. A black hole has mass. It bends light and creates gravity. What we are seeing, however, is a void, a region of space where space itself no longer exists. Picture that for a moment. We are witnessing a place in our solar system where the background star field has simply vanished, not blocked, not absorbed, erased. The probability of a natural object tearing a hole in the vacuum of space is zero. In string theory, we discuss the stability of the vacuum, the very fundamental structure of reality. A punctured vacuum requires energy densities on the scale of the Planck length, energies that no comet, no asteroid, and certainly no natural celestial body can possess. Yet, here we are, looking at data that tells us this very thing has happened. And it gets even more disturbing. At 8:16 UTC, just 2 minutes after the rupture, the European Space Agency's Gaia Observatory registered a gravitational anomaly of 0.004 micron newtons acting on Earth itself. That may sound small, but for an object at that distance to exert instantaneous force on our planet, that defies the speed of light limit. This implies non-local interaction, a connection between Earth and an event taking place 240 million kilometers away. When I first saw these numbers, I assumed it was a sensor glitch in the Hanford interferometer. But then, the data from Kagura in Japan came in, showing the exact same waveform at the exact same timestamp. This wasn't a glitch. This was real. 3I Atlas has just opened a door. But the terrifying part isn't the door itself. It's what the sensors are detecting inside that void. Because at 8:20 UTC, the void didn't just sit still. It began to expand. If the vacuum of space is decaying at that coordinate, then we're not just looking at a scientific curiosity, we are looking at an existential threat to the stability of our solar system. Let's break this down. What started as a small anomaly on a secondary sensor has now become the most critical data set in the history of astrophysics. To truly grasp the magnitude of what occurred, we must go back to the exact timeline of the last 4 hours. At 4:12 UTC, the European Space Agency's Gaia Observatory, which tracks the positions of billions of stars with extreme precision, detected a microlensing event. Usually, when a massive object passes in front of a star, the star's light bends due to gravity. Einstein predicted this a century ago, but Gaia observed the opposite. Instead of the background stars warping around 3I Atlas, the light from those stars simply ceased to exist, not dimmed, not redshifted, gone. A circular region, approximately 4,000 kilometers in diameter, directly behind 3I Atlas, went completely dark. No photons, no radio waves, no X-rays. Pause for a moment and think about the implications of this. In our universe, Even the darkest empty space isn't truly empty. It's filled with cosmic microwave background radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang. If you point a radio telescope at the darkest patch of the sky, you'll still hear the static of creation. But when the Green Bank telescope in West Virginia pointed at the coordinates of 3I Atlas at 5:45 UTC, the signal dropped to absolute zero. Not near zero, but absolute mathematical zero. This is physically impossible. It violates the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Quantum mechanics forbids a perfect vacuum. There must be fluctuations. There must be energy. Yet, the data from Green Bank shows a complete absence of everything. NASA's Deep Space Network confirmed this anomaly at 6:10 UTC. ESA's Gaia spacecraft independently verified the missing star field at 6:12 UTC. The ALMA array in Chile cross-referenced the thermal signature, and the result was the same. 3 independent sources, different methodologies, identical conclusion. We are looking at a region of space where the vacuum expectation value has collapsed. This is not a natural phenomenon. At 7:30 UTC, just 45 minutes before the major rupture, the trajectory of 3I Atlas shifted. For months, we had tracked this object moving on a hyperbolic trajectory, suggesting an interstellar origin. But at 7:30 UTC, the object decelerated. Massive objects don't just hit the brakes in deep space. Newton's first law of motion states that an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an external force. There was no collision, there was no outgassing that could act as a thruster. Yet Doppler radar data from Goldstone's solar system radar indicated a velocity drop of 12 kilometers per second in an instant. That's nearly impossible. To decelerate an object estimated to weigh 33 billion tons by that magnitude requires an energy release equivalent to 500 megatons of TNT. Where did that energy go? There was no explosion. There was no heat bloom. The energy wasn't released. It was absorbed into the void forming behind the object. The data suggests that 3I Atlas is not just creating this hole in space, it is feeding it. It's converting its own kinetic energy into something else, something that tears the fabric of spacetime. At 7:55 UTC, astronomers at the KEK Observatory in Hawaii reported a terrifying visual phenomenon. They were tracking the object in the infrared spectrum when the deceleration occurred. The space around the object began to cleanse itself in reverse. Normally, gravity acts like a magnifying glass, but the space around 3I Atlas began to act like a dispersing lens, pushing light away from the center. This indicates one thing: negative energy density. Theoretical physics has predicted negative energy for decades, but we've never seen it manifest in nature. Negative energy is required to build wormholes, and it's the fuel for an Alcubierre warp drive. But until today, we've never observed it on a macroscopic scale, let alone in a region of space stretching 4,000 kilometers wide, stable, and growing. This is not just theoretical anymore. The object at the center of it all, 3I Atlas, is orchestrating this entire phenomenon. The implications are beyond what we can comprehend. We are not talking about a microscopic quantum fluctuation. This is something that could have the potential to change the very nature of our universe. For the first time, we are seeing the properties of a traversable wormhole in real time. Think about that. A wormhole, a bridge between 2 points in space, can connect vast distances. If this anomaly is real, then we are witnessing the manipulation of space-time itself. The laws of physics that have governed our understanding of the universe for centuries are being bent in ways that shouldn't be possible. The question is no longer what is 3I Atlas, but who built it. Nature doesn't create negative energy stabilizers. Nature doesn't decelerate comets to feed a vacuum collapse. And that brings us to the most disturbing data point of the last hour. At 8 UTC, right before the main rupture event, Voyager 1, now over 24 billion kilometers away in interstellar space, sent back a telemetry packet. Voyager 1 is nowhere near 3I Atlas, it's in the opposite direction. But the magnetometer on Voyager 1 spiked at the exact same moment that the void opened behind 3I Atlas. The precision required for this is staggering. An event in the inner solar system triggered a response in a probe that was leaving the solar system with zero time delay. This implies entanglement. This means that whatever 3I Atlas is doing is affecting the entire heliosphere, our entire solar system. This is not just an isolated event. The void is not simply a hole, it is a connection point. And when we zoom out and consider what happens next, the scale of what we're seeing becomes far clearer. At 8:14 UTC, the rupture event occurred, and from that moment on, everything began to defy every model we have. At exactly 8:30 UTC, something changed. The instruments at the Very Large Array, VLA, in New Mexico detected a coherent electromagnetic pulse originating from the center of the void. This wasn't in the models, this wasn't predicted. It changes everything. To quantify this, the probability of a natural comet emitting a focused, narrowband radio signal at exactly 1,420 megahertz, the frequency of neutral hydrogen, considered the water hole for interstellar communication, is statistically zero. That's practically impossible. And yet, this happened. At the same time, the probability of that same object creating a region of negative energy density behind it is also zero. Both of these events occurring simultaneously in the same object is like winning the lottery every single second for 1 billion years. This combination has never been observed in 4 million years of cometary observation. To understand why this is so groundbreaking, we need to dive deeper into the fabric of space-time itself. According to Einstein's general relativity, space is like a trampoline. You place a heavy bowling ball on it, like the sun, and it curves. That curve is gravity. But to create a hole in this trampoline, to puncture it, you need infinite mass or infinite energy concentrated into a single point. That's a black hole. But 3I Atlas is not collapsing into a black hole. It is doing something far more advanced. It is manipulating the tension of the trampoline itself. Imagine looking at the data from the VLA, where instead of curving space downward with gravity, the area behind 3I Atlas is curving space upward. It's pushing against the vacuum. In string theory, we call this a topological defect. It requires exotic matter with negative mass. But negative mass doesn't exist in the periodic table. It doesn't exist in stars. It can only be created artificially. This is where things get even stranger. When someone like Avi Loeb, who has spent decades searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, reacts the way he did earlier today, stating, "If the data from Gaia is correct, we are witnessing an engineering project, not a celestial event." You know this is something beyond our comprehension. When NASA takes emergency action to reorient the Hubble Space Telescope, it's not because they think it's just another anomaly. It's because the physics we're dealing with here are so outside the realm of what we know that it's forcing us to reconsider everything. Now, let's focus on the real-world implications of what we're witnessing. The energy required to open a stable wormhole, even one just a few meters wide, is equivalent to the mass of Jupiter being converted entirely into energy. That's an unfathomable amount of power. So, where is 3I Atlas getting that energy? It's a rock, right? Cold, dark. Or at least it was, unless, of course, it's not a rock. What I'm about to show you is the data that prompted an unprecedented classified briefing at the White House just 2 hours ago at 8:45 UTC. As the void stabilized, the rotation of 3I Atlas locked in. For months, this object had been tumbling chaotically, just like any other asteroid, but at 8:45 UTC, it stopped. It aligned its axis perfectly with the center of the void it had just created. The precision was beyond comprehension, within 0.002 degrees. Wait a minute, how could this be? A rock doesn't choose its orientation. A rock cannot stop its own rotation without thrusters. And certainly, it cannot point itself directly at a tear in space-time with laser-like accuracy. This suggests something far more advanced. This isn't just a random object tumbling through space. This suggests an active guidance system, a mechanism capable of orienting the object with such precision that it appears to be designed for a purpose. This is no longer about a comet or an anomaly. We are potentially dealing with a civilization, one that is capable of manipulating stellar energy. The physics here suggests that we are witnessing technology millions of years ahead of ours. Perhaps even technology from a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization on the Kardashev scale. A civilization that doesn't just work with the laws of physics, but actively manipulates them. And then, something even more astonishing occurred. At 9 UTC, the void stopped being black. The sensors on the Spitzer Space Telescope picked up a faint glow, but it wasn't heat. It wasn't light from a star. It was Hawking radiation. The theoretical radiation emitted by black holes, but inverted. We were witnessing white hole radiation. Let me pause here. A white hole is the theoretical opposite of a black hole. Nothing can enter it. Only things can leave. It spits out matter and energy. If 3I Atlas has opened a white hole, it's not just a doorway to nowhere, it's a faucet. And whatever is coming through that faucet is about to hit our solar system. At 9:15 UTC, the radiation levels spiked dramatically. The void began to pulse, and at that very moment, the magnitude of this event became clear. Imagine standing in a dark room, and suddenly a door opens, letting in blinding light from a place you've never seen before. That is exactly what is happening 240 million kilometers away. The implications are profound. If this is indeed an Einstein-Rosen bridge, a wormhole, then 3I Atlas is the key. It is the stabilizer. It is the gatekeeper. And now the gate is open. Everything I've shown you so far, the gravity, anomalies, the negative energy, the precise alignment, all of this has been confirmed by 9:30 UTC. But we're not done. At 9:42 UTC, the D-Space network detected something that wasn't in any prior data, something that wasn't supposed to exist. The void behind 3I Atlas moved, but it didn't move with the comet. It moved ahead of it. Let that sink in for a moment. According to Newtonian physics, a shadow follows the object casting it, a wake follows the boat. But the void, this tear in spacetime, accelerated away from 3I Atlas, pulling the object along with it. It wasn't being dragged, it was pleading. At 9:45 UTC, Doppler shift data from the Acrobo Observatory confirmed this impossible motion. The void shifted its position by 40,000 kilometers in less than 3 seconds. That's faster than the escape velocity of our solar system. This means the void is not a passive hole, it is an engine, a propulsion system. If this is a natural scenario, we have just witnessed a new form of matter propulsion that defies the conservation of momentum. If this is an alternative scenario, perhaps a glitch in our understanding of dark matter, then we need to rewrite every textbook on astrophysics. But here's the most extreme possibility. If this is the signature of an Alcubierre warp bubble in action, then 3I Atlas is not a comet. It is a vessel, and the void is its drive signature. A warp drive compresses space in front of a ship and expands it behind. What we are witnessing, the negative energy, the void, the impossible acceleration, matches the theoretical signature of a warp bubble perfectly. The question we're left with is this: are we looking at a breakthrough in physics or a harbinger of something far beyond our understanding? And now, as you watch this, the Parkes radio telescope in Australia is listening to a new signal emerging from the void. It's no longer random noise. It's a carrier wave, a countdown. Every second brings the object closer to critical velocity. In less than 4 hours, 3I Atlas will reach its calculated perihelion. The telescopes are pointed. The detectors are live. The data stream is active. The void is expanding. And whatever 3I Atlas is bringing through that hole in space, we're about to find out.